Hey there, guys. So, best training splits for time poor dads. I'm going to keep this as simple as I can because a lot of you just don't have a lot of time to train in general. So, trying to get a training split to work for a lot of you have probably found quite difficult. What I find is best, and this is keeping it really simple. You want to have one primary heavy day. So you might factor that in on your weekend, like a Saturday morning, just get up a little bit earlier, or a Sunday, whatever day you really want. But that's where you want to get your primary heavy lifts done. When I say, primary heavy lifts, pick one for upper body. So you might do bench press, 4 sets of 8. And then you might do, squats afterwards for lower body, same deal, 4 sets of 8. Now, if you nail those two exercises, you've got upper body covered and you've got lower body covered for the most part. The only other exercise I would throw in for that day to really round it out would be pull-ups if you can do them. Otherwise, opt for some lat pull down or some dumbbell rows or barbell rows, whatever you want really, but you're going to need something for your, back in general. And again, 4 sets of 8 or 4 sets of 10 is going to be fine. Now, if that's your primary heavy day, you're going to find that that is going to sustain the majority of your training progress throughout the week. You will, however, need to throw in an additional, lighter day. Now, that lighter day, you can either do it at the gym. Personally, I prefer going to the gym, twice a week. It just means, I can be more consistent with my lifts in that regard. It doesn't have to be a long session, the second one, it's the same stuff again, your bench press, your squat, and your back exercises, but it's done with a lighter weight. So roughly, 80% of whatever you shifted on the first session. And again, you want to hit the same reps. So, 4 sets of 8 across the 3 movements. Then when it comes to assistant exercises, and this is where a lot of people really, they struggle with the idea of trying to go to the gym all the time. If you can break up your assistant exercises into just single exercises and not having to string multiple, exercises together, being, if you're going to train arms, you might do, bicep curls, 4 sets of 10. And, if you just do that and give yourself 2-minute break times, it's really easy to get that exercise done. Later in the day, you might do tricep extensions, same deal, 4 sets of 10 to 12. Again, 2-minute break times. It becomes really easy to get the total amount of exercises done when you're breaking it up throughout the day. If you've done, say, for instance, I'm going to use the primary heavy day as a Monday, because that's what I normally do. Monday, I'll hit my heavy bench, and sometimes I throw squats in there as well. So it's like Monday is my big day. Tuesday, I'll go into the gym or I'll be at home. It's like, okay, I'm going to just do 4 sets of, 10 to 12 on an assistant exercise in the morning. It only takes me 10, 15 minutes. Then, that evening when I come home or just after work, again, hit arms again or whatever I needed, 4 sets of, 10 to 12. Again, it only takes me 10 to 12 minutes. And I find with the assistant exercises, if you want to push the reps really far north, like I do with the shoulder press, I'll knock out 20 reps sometimes. And it limits the total amount of warm-ups I need to be doing, because the weight relative to the individual, if you're hitting, 15 to 20 reps, isn't significantly heavy. So it just means your chances of injury are a lot less. It's a lot quicker and easier to warm up. And when you're chasing some of the higher reps, it's really easy to stack volume, or if you want, you can superset exercises without feeling utterly spent. For you that aren't really familiar with supersetting, I'll use arms for example. So you might do barbell or dumbbell curls. So you'll do a set of 10 to 12, and then you'll work and you'll immediately following it do something like tricep extensions and knock out a set of 10 to 12. After you've done both sets, that's when you'd have your 1.5 or 2 minutes break, and then you start again and you knock out another set for barbell curls or dumbbell curls, whatever it is, and then you do your tricep movement. So supersetting in that regard also speeds up time. In terms of overall structure as well, having your primary heavy day and then having a secondary lighter day, that works really well. Don't get caught into the trap of trying to fit everything into a 7-day work week. If you need to make it an 8-day training work week, or like a 9-day week for yourself in terms of training, that's also going to work as well. There's nothing special about the 7 days in terms of program, design. You look at the fitness industry like any other industry, and Monday to Friday is typically the work day. So, they want everything structured so that, booking clients is really easy. But the reality is, if you do a really heavy, say, leg session, I know for a fact when I do it, 5 days later, I've only sort of just recovered. Ideally, that's when I then put a lighter leg day, and then it might take me another, 2-3 days after that to recover. So an 8 or 9 day, training split when I'm training legs would work really well. And I've done that before when I've done something like a squat only program. So yeah, if you're not a competitive powerlifter or a competitive strongman or anything of that sort, having your heavy day, waiting, 3-4 days, hitting your light day, then again, wait another 3-4 days and go back to heavy day is going to work really well. And then you just throw your assistant exercises in at home, and you don't have to be overly structured with them. Write out a short list, make sure arms, you've got, something for biceps, something for triceps, legs, something for quads, something for hamstrings. Keep it really simple and just make sure you're ticking the boxes. And that way you're not leaving it too long between training sessions. Ideally, and this is going back to an ideal world, having that heavy primary day where you're, really consistent with it. So for me, mine's a Monday. For a lot of time poor dads, it's going to be a Saturday morning. It just makes structuring your program and dedicating one day to your primary lifts really easy. If you can't get in to do a secondary session, that's quite structured, do everything else at home. Just scatter the assistant exercises, and as long as you're doing something each day and giving yourself a rest, the day before your heavy day, you're going to be in a far better position than a lot of people that try and chase perfect on paper but never get anywhere. So I know for a fact, people that are only bench pressing heavy once a week are still going to make, gains and move forward. It may not be as fast as someone that's training, twice a week. But again, if you're doing your heavy bench press once a week at the gym, and then throughout the week, picking a day, it's like, what, I'm going to knock out 4 sets of 25 of push-ups, and I'm going to make them slow and controlled reps. Again, that's still a quality pushing exercise, and you're still going to make progress. It's about trying to not complicate the overall structure and idea of what training actually is. And for a lot of you, it's just going to be, quality workouts that are scattered. You may not be looking to compete in powerlifting or anything like that. So it's just like, I'm going to pick one day as my primary heavy day, and then somewhere midweek, I'm going to pick another day and just do everything again really light, and then I'm going to scatter my assistant exercises. So that's an approach that works really quite well. You don't have to overcomplicate it, and you just keep a few simple exercises that you enjoy. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Hit like and subscribe. That really does help. And yeah, more than happy to answer questions when I have the time. So again, just do something, because it all adds up.